Good morning. It's January 3rd and I am casting on the real knit to this test knit. It's the Hat for Joy pattern and I'm doing it in Malabrigo, washted Fortaleza, I think is what its colorway is called, and Peggy Jane Fibers Dirty Tangerine. And Peggy Jane Fibers doesn't exist anymore, so it's really special to me. I really love all my Peggy Jane Fibers stuff, and I really appreciate the lady who did it. She's really wonderful. But this is the Hat for Joy, and this is the one that I did previously, and I love it so much. It has like so many mistakes. This was my first hat that I had done on knitting needles. I'd done a million on Nifty Knitters, but I don't count that. So instead we have the Hat for Joy pattern. These are my, sorry, Possum, my cat, is in a very playful mood right now, and he sees the yarn. Don't worry, this is not all the yarn I have. I have this in small skeins, and then I also have another full skein of it. But I love it so much, I'm like, I want this for like a bunch of different projects. I may have to eventually get more, but have some plans with it. This was cast on 120 stitches, and I cast on 123 without counting, so I feel pretty good about that. I went ahead and took off the extra 3 because I can't do anything with those. And the first thing to do is a 2x2 rib, but I always do 1 round of knit just to get everything squared away once I cast on. I cast on super tight. I don't know how to not do that right now, but I cast on super tight, so it's doesn't look like it's going to look until I do my round of knit all the way around. And then it's the 2x2 rib. And when you connect in the round, when you're knitting in the round, you have to be very careful to make sure that you don't twist, because you'll see right here, you can kind of see how it would be like twisted. You can't have this twist in there. Otherwise, the entire knitting will be twisted. Like, I did it one time, and I made it work for the look, but it wouldn't work for a hat. It wouldn't work for most things. So you don't want that twist. You want it to be on the bottom the whole way around. See, I've got a little blump right there. And then with these magic loop knitting needles, you have to like go in at one point and pull the cord. Oh, these are Prime knitting needles, and they're kind of new, I think, a new brand. So I guess this is different than the ones I had previously, and Possum chewed them up. With this hat cast on, and it was terrible. He chewed up the string part, and yeah, I couldn't slide the yarn over it. I didn't even know if I was gonna be able to get it off the needles. I was devastated. So we fixed it. I was able to transfer it to a different pair of needles, but that was like 10 heart attacks. My God, that was so stressful. And it's always a challenge for me to move the knitting over. See, now I've got a twist. I'm gonna have to fix that, but I'll get it fixed. But it's always kind of challenging to move it over the knitting needle because my knitting, when I cast on, is so tight. So we want it about at that point, and then I'll check to make sure it's not twisted. And then of course you got it over here so that you can work with it tight. Okay, pardon me for a moment. Okay, so I got the twist all worked out. And now this is the string end for cast on. Let that go. This is the string, the end for knitting. And I will go ahead and start knitting my knit round. And it's 120 stitches, so it will take me a bit to get, it takes me a bit to get through it all. But now that they're connected, I don't know, I feel like we're like home free, but I know that's not exactly how it works, but we'll see. And you have to like continuously adjust this little loopy part. You have to pull it through and then pull it through and then pull it through. So that's why I don't really love Magic Loop, but I don't have multiple small circulars to do 2 small circulars. I don't have that many double pointed knitting needles, and that would just not be reasonable to do. So we work with what we got. We work with what's reasonable, and we try and make it work. And that's how I knit. I make it work. And you can kind of see where this round has started. This is where it connected, and this is where we have one round, and this is where it's just cast on. So I'm gonna get going with this, add more yarn. I will show you guys when I have to add my next little portion of yarn, because it's not a skein. It's just a portion. But I'll show you guys what I do, and I don't know what other people do, so you'll have to put in the comments what you do when you add a second skein or another area of yarn that's like a different color or something. Because I don't know, I'm curious about that. I learned knitting at a club in college at Appalachian State, the knitting club, and I just learned garter stitch. I didn't really know what a purl stitch was, which is the opposite of a knit stitch. It's just like backwards. And so I learned basic like knit stitch, how to cast on there. And then I'm gonna pull this through. And then I also found this website, Knitting Stitch Patterns, very helpful and useful. They have a lot of video tutorial links, and they just talk about different stitches that you can do. And I got really into knitting lace through that website, through those links. I never saw it as like a trick or anything. It wasn't hard. It was just a fun challenge, knitting lace. and I really enjoy it to this day. I don't do a lot of knitting and lace. I do a lot of, I don't know, I knit a lot in rib, and I do currently a lot of cable work. This has like 14 billion itty bitty single stitch cables, and I think in the pattern they were like doing cabling without a cable. That doesn't work for me. They were like, hold it between your fingers, and I was like, that's not functional. So I just got out my little cable needle and became very acquainted with working with my cable needle. Oh, I know what I need to do. Get more yarn pushed down. It's always like a trick. You have to keep it pushed down so that you have some space, for more space. Because if you have it like this spaced out, you're not gonna be able to pull, and the yarn doesn't just like slide over the needle. So you have to push it with these needles. So I did the knitting stitch patterns, I did some tutorials, and then I basically just kind of like taught myself. And I have a couple of knitting mentors. My friend Jessica is very knowledgeable, and then I have a friend out in Henry County, Joanne Adams, and she has a business, Sweet Homespun, and she's awesome. She is awesome. Big knitting, spinning mentor. Yeah. And other than that, I just kind of like go with the flow, do my own thing. I've been to a couple of stitch and workshops, or not workshops, but circles, and yeah, it's always like so fun, very social. I am getting more into being social with my crafts because over the pandemic I wasn't very social. I did some internet things, like I did the Facebook WAFA group, Wool and Fiber Arts, but that was more just for their sales. They had a sale every month and they had some beautiful things, mostly fiber. They didn't really have like a lot of yarn. I was definitely more into yarn then, and then as it went I was like fully into fiber, because I was starting to learn to spin at that point on my electric eel wheel nano. Not very easy to learn to spin on. And also that wheel, that e-spinner, is much better for an even, consistent, thin yarn. I wanted to do chunky art yarn, so it was very frustrating. And then after that I learned to spin on a drop spindle about a year later, and that became like a great love of mine. Now I have like a bunch of drop spindles and support spindles and top whirl and bottom whirl, and I'll explain all these different terms in a spindle video, but yeah, it's become a great passion of mine. And then I eventually was able to get a wheel. I was gifted one for my college graduation, and yeah, I like practiced how to spin last Christmas because I was like, I have all this fiber for my advent calendar, I need to spin. And it was like the first mini skein I did went well. The second mini skein I tried to do did not go well. It was horrible. And then I tried I was like, well, if I'm going to like ruin some fiber, I might as well ruin bad fiber. Not really a good plan, and I wasn't ruining it, so I don't know what my plan was there. But I used some, gosh, what is that fiber that I have? I believe it's Tunis wool, and I got it for $25 for like a ginormous laundry bag worth that was picked and washed. And other than that, it needed to be prepped. Well, I didn't know how to prep fiber, so I was just like puffing it up like a cloud like I do for my Chiangora fiber. I'll explain more about what that is later, but I don't want to freak y'all out, so. But it did not work. I needed to do some actual fiber prep, which was silly because I had flicker combs, which are fiber prep tools. I just didn't know that was like a good way to prep just raw fiber. I thought it was for making rollags only, and I was like into making the rollags, and I did red and green rollags, and it came out all brown, and it was just emotional, so I put the wheel away. Well, I pulled it back out for Tour de Fleece, which goes on at the same time as Tour de France, and it's a big Ravelry thing, big spinny thing, and I was like, okay, it's time to learn. Adjusted my tension, that was the problem, and got spinning, and I spun a whole bunch for Tour de Fleece, and I really learned how to use that wheel. I'm still learning well, I think I'll be learning always, but I hope I will. And I'm still really learning on my jumbo flyer, which I was using for plying earlier, and I think I ruined some yarn that was like important yarn for a project I was doing, and it just has such a low twist. I don't know how to fix that. I don't think you can fix that, but I'm gonna knit with it. I'm gonna knit with it, and it'll probably break, and I'll be like, oh no, it's falling apart, and it'll be awful, but I'm gonna do it. So yeah, but I'm almost all the way around for my knit round, and then I will do knit 2, purl 2, rib for, I don't know, is this 2 inches, 2.5 inches, whatever that is, and maybe make it a little bit, no, it's good, because it was supposed to fold over, but I think it looks really no bueno folded over. It doesn't like stay put. I don't know. I don't like the look, and it needs to be longer for that. So I think it looks good just as like a little slouchy hat with it just not folded over. But yeah, so I'll do that much, and then hopefully I'll have enough of this dirty tangerine to like finish the hat. But if not, I'll do, I don't know. I have this pretty Dancing Spirit pink from Miss Bads that I could add in, and it's kind of complimentary. I think it wouldn't look bad, so we'll see. I'll be able to tell a little ways in, and then I can adjust the plan. I'm always adjusting plans. I think it's good to be able to adjust your plans. So I'm gonna get knitting, and I've got some other projects that are happening right now. I need to work on my red cabbage dye because it sat overnight, and it is ready to be washed and stuff. I am experimenting with putting my dyed things directly in the dryer to set the dye, and then washing it and then letting it dry again, and that'd be done. And I have a project that I have planned to use them, and also to add to my collection of, this is what I've made chart. This is avocado with no baking soda. This is avocado with baking soda, you know, different types and the dye recipes. Yeah. Oh, and then I'm working on the yo-yo quilt a little bit. I didn't film any of that yesterday because I only worked on it for an hour. I didn't get it all out and look at it, which is usually what I have to do to like understand what I'm doing. Hadn't worked on it since last May, so it has been a while. I think I need to take it all out, lay it all out, make sure I know what I'm doing, and then at this point I'm connecting yo-yos. I'll explain more about what this is. So I've made a billion yo-yos. Now I need to connect the yo-yos to make the fabric. So yay. I'm gonna get to work. Hi, so I'm pegging work back up on this hat that I've been working on. This is the Hat for Joy pattern that I have talked about before, and I'm in the crown decreases right now. So I worked a cuff, I worked a few lines of just stockinette, and then I started the pattern, which was 4 repeats of an 8-line pattern that was very complicated, and it creates these cables and a moss stitch in between. And now you can see that this has decreased, and we're about to start decreasing on this part. And I'm just working that right now. And after this line, I'm going to transfer this off of my Magic Loop circular knitting needles to my double pointed knitting needles, because that's easier to work when you have a smaller amount of stitches. So I'm going to do the sped up version of my knitting, and I'll meet you guys later. So I am done with that round, and now I'm going to transfer onto my double pointed knitting needles. I'm also going to count the stitches. There's supposed to be 75 right now, but I have a feeling it might be 70 because I have a feeling I might have taken out a stitch on each one. So we will see. And then I will have all of my stitch markers free again. So that's the process, and I just counted there's 15 for each 5 sections, so I'm guessing that I won't have any one that's, you know, missing or gone from my actual stitch count. So I think there's going to be 75 stitches, but I'll put these on the needles and then go ahead and work on the next round. So I ended and I counted, there were 2 stitches extra where I had just, I don't know what happened. Anyhow, and now I am on to the last little bit. You may see me using this weird little green needle. This is called a cable needle, and it helps you move a part of the knitting over another part of the knitting, which creates a line going that way. It looks like a braid, and that's called a cable. So I decreased down and I'm to 65 stitches now, and I would need a stitch marker, just one of the clip-it-on types, to say this is the first section, but I'm just working with these green needles, and I'm gonna transfer this one over to a white needle and then have that one be my new starting needle. It's a little bit tricky to, I mean, this looks like nuts with all the different needles on there. Usually when you think of knitting, you think of 2 knitting needles, but this I really like. These are double pointed knitting needles, and it's really fun. I think you just have to get used to holding a lot of things in your hand, especially when you bring in the cable needle. You're just holding like multiple things in your hand, but once you get the hang of that, it's very easy. I don't know, it takes a lot of effort, but physically it's easy. So yeah. That's what I'm doing right now. I just have a few lines left, and I think it decreases by 10 stitches every round now, maybe more, and we'll get down to it. Okay, so we're finally to finishing time. I got to the point where I finished everything that the pattern is on, and for a hat, what you're going to do is cut the yarn, thread it through a yarn needle, and for a hat, you take off all the stitches onto that yarn. So you'll just transfer it over, slurp it up. Trying to get my handle on this. Done with those needles. And when it gets to this point, it's like really floppy. So you have to kind of like look at which way your stitches are going to be able to get it right, because it's like, well, which needle is, you know, it on right now, which are the next stitches. But it's pretty easy to figure out, and you just transfer them over to the end of the yarn. And then I like, with my very last stitch, to tie a knot into that stitch so that I am, you know, I've got my tighten your hat and then tighten your knot, and then you can secure the yarn in your favorite way. I go a few stitches in around the little hole of the top, making sure to close that hole, get everything in there, and then I go turn it inside out and secure this end in a couple of different places. Just get it real secure. And then I'm going to tie another knot, because that's what I like to do, and cut. And then I will do that with the 3 other places, secure those, and I'll add on my palm.